going on. It's all business here. It's all
Hey,
professional.
if I wore anything other than this, would be a costume for me.
Oh man. I want to talk about the variables, right? Like Sharpie, like when you talk to, a young goalkeeper who's going into their first match in that type of a setting, do you talk about any of the variables that might be different than what they're accustomed to?
Yeah, I mean, again, I go back to you just don't want to over inform someone. Like you just don't want to put too much into their mind where they're overthinking everything. I mean, we talk a lot about overthinking things. I mean, we've faced. Look, let's take this last 7 days, 10 days. We faced a very, very good LA Galaxy team who are very dangerous in transition, have a lot of options in the box. Jovalic, Royce, Peck, Pansel, Puig. It's, they've put us being goalkeepers in the position in the last, 7 days. And in the 3 games we played this year where, we're in positions where we have a lot of time prior to the final action to overthink things, where the last 3 days we've completely worked on putting ourselves in these situations where there is time to overthink, but just relying on our settled positions, our instincts, hand shape, body shape, whatever it comes into the spaces. But, I think to answer your question, Mikey, no, I don't want to talk too much about variables, especially in Adam's situation, because I don't want to put too much into his head. I just want him to go out there and trust what he's been working on all year, trust what we've been working on as a goalkeeper group all year, trust our style of play, and that the profile of the goalkeeper that we are putting together at this football club is going to be, well enough equipped to deal with whatever the game throws at him in the variability of what the game does. And look, there's enough video these days, Mikey, and obviously we do our homework extensively on the opposition, but the variability is very rare within what teams are or are not going to do in a game. Like Austin was exactly what we thought they were going to do. There wasn't much different to what we thought was going to. LA Galaxy have been exactly the same in the 3 games we played them this year. Whether they're different tomorrow night because they're looking for a different change-up, we will see. But I feel we have prepared the goalkeepers this week the best way we can to make sure that they are ready for what we know they will throw at us and anything else that may come within their system. If there's a system change, if there's a personnel change, whatever that looks like.
In regards to like the variables and everything like that, like, so let's not talk about like, preparing for these variables, but Adam, was there anything just speaking freely, like that you experienced during that game against Austin that either you didn't expect from an intangible standpoint, maybe the atmosphere, maybe how you felt emotionally or anything like that, that's going to better prepare you for your next first team match?
I would just say the atmosphere and things like that. For me, I had a kind of nervous expectation. I wasn't sure what it was going to feel like, and it was almost a calming factor for me. Helped me focus in, and like Sharpie said, the overthinking and the thoughts that you have. For me, it helped me focus in that present moment, and that for me was a little bit of a surprise because I wasn't sure what it was going to be like, and with an atmosphere like that. But it relaxed me and really helped me focus.
I think one of those things, Sharpie, how you talk about obviously the difficulty of when you have a goalkeeper that's splitting time and you consider they're your number 2, but you also want them to get reps. If Adam had just been with Rapids 2 the entire season, he wouldn't have been as familiar of the environments that he'd be going into, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, I think too, this is part of the systems you put together at the club. I would never put unless it was absolute dire straits. We were 3 goalkeepers down, and young Zach was the next man up. But I don't think we'd ever put a goalkeeper in a situation, or a player for that matter, in a situation where they don't know the style of play. They don't know the expectations of the goalkeeper within our style of play. They're not familiar with what we're asking of the goalkeeper. It just wouldn't be fair on them. We have quite often 4 of the boys training with us on a daily basis, and that obviously too, young Zach has to prepare for his games for Rapids too, also, all the 18s, wherever he's playing on the weekend. But they will often see Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and sometimes Thursdays with us during the week, so they are getting up to speed and becoming familiar with what the boss is asking in the first team environment as well. And it can be slightly different in the second team. Their style of play can be slightly different, obviously based on personnel too, whether we're giving them players for the Sunday game or they're going with all the R2 boys and some of the academy mixed lads, which is obviously wonderful for those goalkeepers because you're getting a nice mixture of guys and you have to manage certain pots of people. But again, for me, if we felt that one of the boys was going to be or has a chance of playing with us, they need to be in that environment and feeling the pressure of the experienced players around them, the Georgies, the Maxus, the Reggie Cannons, the Keegan Rosenberries, these types of guys, and making sure that they've got a nice sense and a nice feeling for those. And obviously that those boys trust what's behind them as well, which obviously seeing Adam and being with Adza all year, they very much do.
So let's kind of get back to these training sessions and everything like that right here. Adam, just out of curiosity, did your reps change at all during the week, or were they about the same?
What do you mean?
As in, like, were you
like number of reps?
See more, number of reps. Did you see more reps than you usually do when you're not going to be starting, or is it the same amount?
It's all based on loading and what I'll see, but I think the biggest thing for us was making sure I feel good and going into the game. So we might cut down a little bit, just so I'm feeling good physically and nice and explosive and light going into the game. But yeah, it is pretty similar.
Sharpie, is that on an individual basis, or is that kind of flat across the board?
Ad's had a little bit of an interesting week. So, he had a couple of very long flights to Europe that, I just wanted to make sure that he, more than anything else, was physically feeling good come Saturday. We did cut down a little bit on the reps on the Thursday because Ads didn't land until 4:00 on the Wednesday night. But again, I'm a big person for the pod. I'm a big person for the data. And like Ad said, the loading, I'm very upfront with the boys on their loading and where they are and the live data that we have at the training sessions. But I'm also very, very big on the feel of the guys. I will ask them to a point where they probably, get sick of me during the session. But in Adam's situation, like, Ads, how you feel? Feel all right? Yep. Legs are good. Yep. No, I'm heavy. Yep. Whatever it is. I just need to know I'm that person who wants that feel. If at any point I feel like I can see that they're lagging a little bit, done. Perfect. No problems at all. And I think, again, that goes back to the beginning of the conversation. That's the trust that I have with the guys and they have with me. But, we're fortunate enough to have the live data, and I know exactly where I want the boys on any given day. It's all premeditated. And obviously if they are not playing on the weekend, the 2 and the 3, I can afford to give them a little bit more throughout the week. And sometimes we adjust it. And look, sometimes for Zach and Ads and Ethan, like Zach will go, no, I want one more. Give me one more. It's a feel for him. And yep, no problems, the extra one. But, on that Thursday leading into Adam's game, we prescribed a little bit less for him. I think he may have taken one extra rep of the 2 ball at the end just because he wanted one more rep to see it again. But, there also comes a point where myself as a coach, I have to stop it and say, yep, you're done. You're out. That's my role and responsibility to make sure these guys are in the best position for themselves too.
Yeah, and kind of getting back to kind of some of these sessions here, if like we're getting back to here or everything like that. Like Adam, like when you had the discussion, when you found out that you were going to be starting, were there any specific things? Like I know you said you wanted to keep the same routine and everything like that, but were there certain areas that you said personally, I want to focus on these things to prepare myself for that match on decision day? Or I mean, obviously you trust Sharpie and you trust, the scouting of Austin and everything, but from a personal standpoint, was there anything you were like, oh, I really want to make sure that I'm in tune with this?
I would say it, like you said, is trusting Sharpie and what he thought would I would see on the weekend, and training those things throughout the weekend. But I feel like the biggest thing for me was getting the timing right, feeling good, physically and mentally, just going in, feeling sharp, clear decisions on everything, and yeah, just a feel good sessions, just going in and making sure all the timing and everything's just nice and clean.
Yeah, I love what you said right there, Adam. And it's like, Sharpie, I think this is something to really share with a lot of young coaches out there, is that make those goalkeepers feel confident going into that match, as opposed to if this was 4 months earlier and they're not playing, it could be different coaching behaviors. But that week is about making sure that they feel comfortable for that match.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, look, as you get, for myself, as you get more experience, you get older, you realize, certain sessions are going to create success. Certain sessions are going to create failure. Do you want success? Do you want failure? Do you want a little bit of both throughout the day? Are you able within the session to adjust if you are getting too much success, or it's too simplified, or it's too complicated and you need to simplify it? Do you have adjustments within your session you can make on the fly that offer those for the guys? I felt because of Adam's week leading into it that we needed a session on the match day -2 that would offer him what Austin were going to show us, but also allow him to have success both physically and mentally.
All right, welcome back to Gloves Off. We are returned with Saskia Weber. Even though last recording we had Lori Katz, which was a great fill-in for you, Saskia. I have to admit, she did a fantastic job of telling her story of being the first All-American goalkeeper ever, 1980. And she did a fantastic job of just talking back. And I think the main thing, if I were to boil everything down, is, Saskia, whatever fraction you had invested into you then compared to now, I mean, that it's like 1/10 of that went into her story. I mean, her story was crazy. If anyone wants to know what college soccer was like at the time and the difficulties, as someone who even transferred herself, and she got a letter from Oregon, like just the whole process. It
was so different. I mean, even for me coming in after her, because I went to college 89. Yes, 89, everybody, don't fall off your chairs. I look good though. But even back then, first of all, don't fall off your chairs again. There was no internet. So you had to write your coaches, you had to mail clippings in, you weren't really sending videotapes in and stuff.
Did you have a VHS tape of yourself?
I didn't. Mm-mm.
Wow. Okay.
And then what it leaned really heavy into is they actually had to come see you. Yeah. Where nowadays you can scroll through the videos, you could do all that, and then say, okay, I'm not going to go see this person. They actually had, tournaments were really important for that. And I know tournaments are important as well, but we've talked about on the show, how, if you're a goalkeeper and you're on the best DCNL team and you're hoping a coach is going to see you play at a tournament, the odds are they're not going to see anything, because you're probably not going to be doing much in goal, and they're going to hopefully catch you in warm up. It's I can't imagine. I've heard stories from Kim Wyatt and people like that, and so I came a little bit after that.
One thing that stood out to me, just to put a pin on it, but the asking her about what did you know at the time, and she was like, nothing. I didn't know who was a good team. We went and played teams, and then you kind of learned from that. But there was no sort of scouting. There was no sort of she didn't really know what she was getting into. She just knew there was a soccer team there. So the whole concept is crazy for me to think.
And I think what's funny is how much landscapes changed too. Right. So when you look back, even when I was in college, you had schools that aren't even on the radar anymore. William and Mary was a great school. UConn has come back. Tejan, great job. I played with you. But UConn, UMass, teams that really fight to even get into the tournament now, or even be competitive. Yeah, were that was it. There was no UCLA's. The only West Coast team that was good was Stanford. And sorry, Santa Clara, but
We played George Mason at the time. We played George Mason a couple of years ago.
Yeah, George Mason.
They have their national championship trophy, which I loved seeing, but it was so man, this is kind of ancient history. Just how fast athletics move. So no, it was very cool.
It's definitely a lot. Yeah. There's a lot in there. Just the ACC was still just growing, and there were no Southern teams. It was SMU maybe. It was spotty. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. No,
it was an East Coast. It was lacrosse is kind of. It was more of an East Coast sport.
I'm gonna have to go find some more goalkeepers from the era just because hearing the stories is crazy. I loved it. I would highly recommend going back and listening to that. But we are super glad to have Saskia back with us. And Saskia, we have a number of things going on. It's funny because it's off season. It feels like, okay, it's going to slow down a little bit, which I guess, there's no games. I get that. But I think probably a big starting point for me here is Nicole Barnhardt, who just recently retired and then instantly slid over to the assistant goalkeeper coach spot, which wasn't a total surprise. I think, I think when you knew that someone was staying on the roster as a player into her 40s, seeing them switch over to the coaching side was clear that they obviously have a huge passion for the game.
Yeah, but also Barney, she garners so much respect, and she's going to be a great coach. And I love that Washington's doing this in the sense of, we, as the league goes, we want to start developing. This is exactly what we need. We need to start developing females when they retire to take over positions. So we stop just, so we can get more female coaches out there. Yeah. And I love that they're doing this. I think she's going to be great. And I don't think it'll be that long until you see her being a, head goalkeeper coach at an NWSL team or a USL team or something.
Yeah, very interesting to see what's going forward because I think if just a little bit I've heard from her speak. I've never met her, but hearing her speak, there's a huge passion. She has this kind of quiet demeanor, but she has this huge passion for working with others in a general sense, and certainly the position as well. So she has been just, for me, hands down easy Hall of Fame, like no question. 53 caps, I believe, played forever. She's just like a legend. I think, unfortunately, for modern fans, kind of caught her on the tail end of her career, and they don't really understand like where she was and what she's done.
I think Hall of Fame is hard. Know how I feel about the Hall of Fame, right? I think it's hard if you never want to. I think it's hard. So. Speaking from myself, but yeah, it's one of those goalkeepers that should get into the Hall of Fame 100% at some point. Maybe she doesn't have to wait like Nick Romando didn't, but I'm not going to let that go. By the way,
no, you shouldn't. Honestly, love you, Nick Romando, but I think it probably stung more. We could go down that rabbit hole again. I don't really need to, but it just stung because it was right at the same time as Harvey. It's even if it was just a year later, it would have been a little less. But it's
it was just like Harvey, who's won a World Cup, who's won an Olympics, who's done all this stuff, who's just off the field ridiculous as well, and her contributions. Yeah, I think that's what really got my goat, or however you want to call it. That really pissed me off. The fact that you, in the same breath, look, Nick Romando down the road would earn it, but this is somebody. Are you kidding me? And it took them 30 years to put her in, and it took you, what was this, your first time being eligible, and you got in? I'm like, come on.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I will say, to wrap up on Barnhardt here, I think probably the big standout in her career, obviously played many years. But I think most people don't really notice. In 2010, Sola was out as they were going through the World Cup qualifying process. So the U.S. actually dropped a game to Mexico, and that pushed the U.S. I don't know if you remember this, but that pushed the U.S. before the 2011 World Cup into
the playoff
series with Italy. And Barnhardt played that, and of course they qualified and made the World Cup. But it was this real kind of dicey period, whoa,
I remember that almost didn't qualify for the World Cup.
That is, you think of the U.S. not. The men's team, you can see it happening, but the women's team, it's them not qualifying for the World Cup. That is crazy. So
hey, hats out, the men have come out playing well these past few games. So we'll see.
True. We won't completely bury the men's side here. That's fair. That's fair. We have also another recent retirement, and
Betos,
who, I think for me, I think it's easy to throw the word legend around the system.
I love that you have the comments up.
Yeah, I took it and I was like, whatever. All right, it's supportive.
It's okay. It's cool.
I haven't combed all these. I assume they're all okay. They all look.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, but I think this is another example of a goalkeeper that, again, for modern fans, kind of missed a little bit. But she, you just don't see many goalkeepers getting into their 30s ever, And then now we're getting to this era where it's like, it's not extremely common. We still have like ways to make on that, but I think it's awesome that Betos had such a long career. I think you see when you think of a lot of retirements, sometimes it feels a bit early, like, you kind of had some gas in the tank. And she certainly bounced around the league a little bit, but I think the fact that she kept getting picked back up, where I think sometimes you see keepers and players get bounced around and they just kind of quietly, don't return, which I understand. But the fact that she hung around for so long and did, it's not just a league, it's the best league in the world. So I think it's awesome. I also think it's funny of like the free advertising gloves get in these moments, because I'm pretty sure that's West Coast that she's wearing. I think those are kind of funny of like these moments here. But no, just I think not to the prestige that Barnhardt got, obviously for obvious reasons, but I'm always thrilled when a keeper plays for 10 professional years. Like, that's awesome. We just don't see that a whole lot.
Well, you don't think that Barnhardt's going to get the year-long retirement that Megan Rapinoe got?
I mean,
at every single stadium and still to this day, no, because keepers. I mean, Nair's not even going to get that when
she just kind of like quietly retired, like as they played the European series, and she was like, okay, these are the last ones I'm done. No, I think for the people who know, they know. I wish in a general sense keepers got a little bit more publicity, but I mean, there's no denying, like, when you're staying in the league this long, I mean, she's not retiring at 25. She's 34, I believe.
But I think we're seeing a trend. I think we're seeing a shift, and we had talked about this before, that the shift has to happen, and when's it going to happen? And I think you're seeing it. Number one, you're seeing it because of free agency, and I think you're like, watch what you wish for. But I think free agency is obviously a great thing. I mean, Germa just signing for $1.1 million, and that with Chelsea, and that allows for that. Now you also have to look at like this. There were like a couple days ago, there were 42 roster spots left on all NWSL teams, and there were 60 something free agents. So, you kind of, I think you're going to see people start to say, I can't bounce around that easy. And you're starting to see more European players be brought in now, because that frees up a lot of money, and so I think we're starting to see that shift in goalkeeping, which we need. Which honestly, thank you Betos, and thank you Barnhardt. Even Nair's retiring from international play. AD, when we talk about French, like, not sure the trajectory here, but, I think her starting days are over, quite possibly. And so I think we're starting to see that shift where you're seeing this young crop of goalkeepers, and I can list them off, starting to take over. And even changes in teams where you look at New York, traded Smith to Houston, right? And so now you have Betos is gone. So now you have Ryan Campbell, who's going to sit in behind Schultz. And so you're seeing that shift in goalkeeping, which I'm excited for, to be honest with you. I'm excited for. Like, yes, it's time to retire for some people. And that's a long career. I'm sorry, it is.
Well, and I think the thing I come back to is I understand when you're not at a level anymore, it doesn't make sense to like expect either the same amount of playing time that you had previously or to keep a roster spot. I get that. However, it does feel like we're hitting this weird apex of like or influx of talent and lack of teams, where I think that's my frustration, is like the expansion just feels so painfully slow. And I
agree with that. The expansion's ridiculously slow. And I think that look, I don't know what goes into it, like business wise. And like, I even know Boston's behind the 8 ball from everything I've read, even with their stadium and stuff. So you should be ready to go if you want to be an expansion team. And I think it should be the following year. Like, I would love for Denver to come in sooner. I'd love for one of, the Ohio teams to have got, or both of them. Like, and it's not for lack of players out there. Like, I don't feel that way, because we're seeing that, like I said, with the free agents. But again, I don't know what goes into it. So I'm just speaking from like a fan. I'm fangirling right now that I want more teams and I want these players. What I am speaking from is a goalkeeper perspective. And I think that we have to look behind. Well, she still has some years in her, stuff like that. You have to look into the business side of it. And are we going to spend this money that we have under the salary cap on a Betos to sit on the bench when we can bring in, you can have, like, what do you have? You've got Campbell, then you've got all the young goalkeepers, some that are already in the league. You've got Claudia Dickey, Mandy McGlynn. You've got the young ones, that you've got Mia Justice, who's going to Utah. So you have these young players that aren't going to start their first year, but you're developing, because we're seeing that look at Didi Haracic. Okay, so Didi started for 3 years for Angel City, and Angel City decides, you know what, we're gonna put our eggs in the Angelina Anderson basket, and it's time to just bite the bullet and make that transition. But that's a whole nother story, because oh my God, talk about a goalkeeper crop in San Diego.
Oh
my God, I like immediately reached out to Jill Lloyden at TKI. I was like, oh my God.
Well, okay,
Sheridan and Haracic. Come on.
I'm guessing the idea is Sheridan stepping away at various times in the year with the national team, because I'm trying to think. I mean, maybe you can kind of fill me in a little bit, but I'm trying to put myself in Haracic's shoes and thinking, like, why would you go there? And I assume there's a promise of, like, hey, you'll get some minutes, but there's no. I mean, I don't think anyone's seriously thinking she's gonna unseat.
Well, I think in a year like last year that made sense. This year there isn't really for Canada, because Sheridan plays for Canada. There isn't. Now, if you look at, like, okay, take a Ryan Campbell for example. Now, if she sits second behind Schultz, Schultz got the European Championship, right? However, there is a big break in July. The NWSL's on break in July. Right. Yeah. So, but there are still going to be games, right? And you'll probably see that mix of international games again, Club America, and Chivas and stuff like that. And then you're going to get playing time because your goalkeeper's gone. I don't know how much playing time Haracic's going to, and I think knowing Didi, she's like, I'm going to go win the spot. like, which is, hey, you want a 1 and a 1B. Like, somebody changed that for me. Now it's not like, 1.5, like I said, but, that's gonna be fun training. I'll tell you that. And they train together with TKI, so it's not like they're familiar. They're familiar.
There's a lot that goes into a move, and especially when you have this free agent move where, I mean, no one twisted Haracic's arm here to make this move, so she actively agreed to this. She didn't get traded, but I would love to hear some of these finer details, because I think, like, location is something that people don't talk a lot about. Like, is that a place you want to go play? What is the goalkeeping coach situation? Do they even have a goalkeeping coach?
Well, it's interesting you say that. Did Didi not want to leave California? And that's a possibility too. I don't know. Like, that and with free agency, or even being let go, released by Angel City, you have the power now to do that. You have the power to say, you know what, I want to stay in California. Let me see if I can go to Bay or San Diego, or I want to stay on the West Coast, or but you might have to make some concessions. Now you're going in and you have to fight for a starting spot, or you're the designated number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there'd be a lot there, and especially as a fans, you just kind of, it's easy to boil it down of, like, almost like it's a video game of, like, well, this player is this rating, and your rating isn't as high, so why would you go there? Like, there's a million things that go into this sort of stuff.
And there's something else we didn't bring up, and I know we're still talking about the retirement, but you have to make. Unfortunately, you guys, we don't get paid very much, so with respect to Naomi Girma, but she should be being paid a heck of a lot more than $1.1 million. But we're slowly creeping up, you guys.
In there.
We're getting there slowly. But at the end of the day, if you are Barnhardt, if you are a Betos, you have to step back and look at yourself and say, am I going to spend this many more years as a number 2, making minimum salary, do I want to go overseas and play? Like, I got to the point where I was considering once the 99 World Cup was up and the 2000 Olympics and stuff, I was like, do I go back? Once the WSA folded, my question to myself was, do I want to go back overseas? And I had my dual citizenship. So I had my European Union passport and everything for Holland. And I could have, but there were leagues, but there weren't really leagues like there are now. Totally different situation, everybody. If it had been like it is now, I would have gone. But you have to sit back and say, am I going to start my life? Like, I have to start a second chapter at some point as well and actually make a living.
Do you
Sorry.
No, that's fair. Do you mind sharing what you got paid throughout your career at various times? Do you remember?
I was paid in Japan $80,000 a year.
What?
And for 70 or 80,000.
Wow.
And then for the WSA, I was paid $80,000 a year.
Okay. I mean, that's
well, we were the founding
Right.
members. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm gonna get so much hate mail for that right now. I don't care. Whatever. It's obviously didn't work out, but which we were founding members. We created the league. Like hands-on created the league, not like, just by name only, like sat in board meetings, like did everything and stuff. So, that was part of it. And then, and they were guaranteed contracts. am I going to get sued? I wasn't allowed to say that. It's kind of a long time ago. So.
20 year, the 20-year limit.
Yeah. There's I'm like, if I can't go to jail for some things, because of statute of limitations, I'm sure I'm going to talk about this.
Yeah.
And I could probably get a pardon anyway. I had to say that.
Yeah.
So
hey, gloves off. It's gloves off.
It's gloves off. So, but that was it. That was the highest there was. Yeah. Like there was no and that's why a lot of people actually went and played in Japan. Yeah. Because we were all owned by corporations. I was I was Okidata, and stuff like that. And so, and then the salary we had here for WSA, those were guaranteed salaries. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Wait, I just looked it up. The minimum for 2025 is 48,500, and it says it raises to 82.5 for 2030. And I'm assuming that's like incremental. Surely that's not just a huge jump, but
no, it's probably what?
Yeah, whatever.
It'll be 10 a year or whatever.
Yeah.
But as it should be, and the difference in that change is right now, and you guys have to remember something. I got that salary. I had to pay for everything. Okay, like I had to pay for I lived in Manhattan. First, I lived in Philly, and then I was in Manhattan. So, or in New York. So I had to pay my rent. I had to pay everything. So the way the league has dealt with that is that the league pays for the teams pay for the housing for the players. And so so now living in LA minus $2,000 a month or something for rent. Now, if you're living in North Carolina, it's probably not that much, but but living in LA, $2,000 a month. So that minus that from your salary. So that's another $24,000 that you would have had to pay. You would have had to pay out of pocket.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
But that's going to change with that change in salary.
Yeah. Well, all positive things there. I think. I mean, things growing, things getting better. I mean, I think at some point, like it is kind of you get into this insatiable just growth for growth's sake, and I think you can get some problems there. But I feel so far away from that at this point. Just trying to find more spots for players to play, keeping the level of play at a certain point. I think the moves have been interesting. You hit a number of them. I'm going to quickly go through all the ones I've seen from the last time we recorded. So if I'm missing one, I apologize to anyone. But in no real order, Abby Smith, as you mentioned, is going to Houston. I did see Bella Bixby get re-signed for another year, which is interesting. She just had her first kid this past year, which is the Instagram pictures have been very cute.
But I think part of that maternity leave was that she was always coming back.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just awesome to see I kind of wish it was a little more out there, but it's just cool to see like confidence in a club of like, hey, like we know like they're coming back here, which is good to see.
Yeah.
Some of the newer or like first years, you got Ryan Campbell going to Gotham as you mentioned. Claire Gagny's going to SKC. Both of those are 1-year deals. Mia Justice actually signed a 3-year deal, which I thought was really interesting. That's a huge sign of commitment. And that's also paired with Mandy Hott, who just signed a 5-year contract, which is kind of crazy because when she was at Gotham, I don't think they really rated her like that. And just to see where she was and to where she is now is wild.
Well, it's also for Justice. I mean, I know it gives you a certain sense of security, but when your starting goalkeeper just signed a 5-year deal and you come in at a 3-year deal, I mean, you're not locked in. I mean, they can work out a trade and stuff like that. But right now, I get it. I mean, I get it. You want to have some security. I understand that.
Yeah. Well, and I think ideally the player agreeing to that is like, hey, I also believe in what you are doing, like how you are believing in me. So ideally, like they can find some loan situations. We'll talk about the USL here in a second. But other situations, I can't remember, but Shelby Hogan's going to Gotham, I feel like her stock, I wouldn't say plummeting, but it feels like it has dropped significantly from just a couple of years ago, where I think people expected her to kind of take over in Portland, and obviously that's not the case now. And so be really curious to see where she goes. Obviously Ryan Campbell coming in as well, and just kind of seeing like, okay, how is this going to play out?
I think if you're Gotham, you look to see if you can develop Campbell with the knowing you have some security in a Hogan that has experience in the league. Yep. But you look at it like an Angeline Anderson, and you say, all right, we have Dee. We'll get her some games. It didn't, maybe it was a little premature or she's not there yet. And then, now she's your go-to. But you still have Hannah, there as well. And I'm pretty sure they'll bring in.
Oh, sure.
They're going to bring in a third. And I think Angel City will probably look to bring in a goalkeeper with experience. Sure. Because technically they don't have a goalkeeper with any NWSL experience, really.
Well,
I mean,
you mentioned AD earlier. I think French coming in, that's probably someone of that kind of level, like someone that you could lean on if you need to, but gives you a pathway for Anderson. Some other the last few moves that may be worth mentioning. Jordan Bloomer 2-year extension with Louisville, and then Marissa Bova, who I would love to see get some more playtime, and honestly, same for Jordan as well. But to see them get some more playtime, Bova just signed a 3-year contract with the Courage. So it feels like, and I feel like sometimes people just try to force narratives, and I'm not trying to do that, but just like 2025 just feel a little bit of like people taking a little bit more risk. And I think Anderson's probably the big one for me. It's like in the past, I don't think teams would have really been able to, or would have been likely to make those moves. But now it's like, you look at her resume, there's been some bright spots, but she hasn't really had the consistency, hasn't really gotten herself totally established, but you see them really paving a way for her. Whereas in the past,
for Anderson.
Yeah, for Anderson, yeah.
And I think they made that clear last year that she was the future. I mean, if you talked to Becky Tweed, she was constantly saying Anderson's the future, Anderson's the future. Well, for I think Angel City, the future's now because all the changes. And here's a team that being the richest franchise or the worth the most franchise in the world, comes in an exorbitant amount of pressure that you got to win. And so, sometimes you have to, I think, make those hard decisions and hard changes. And I think a lot of coaches and a lot of, GMs, the biggest fear is to do that in goal. But you have to.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like the interesting spot we're hitting, because what you're saying makes sense. I think there's just a lot of fear to go put that responsibility on a young goalkeeper who, I mean, I don't know the numbers. She hasn't had that much time yet.
No, she's had like what, four or five games.
Much, so,
but that's why I think Angel City will go out and bring in like French wouldn't be a bad person. Somebody that's already had the change, so already knows is a great teammate and everything on the bench.
Yeah.
But has the experience and is a leader. Like, so they have to bring somebody in like that as well, because Hannah, was injured. I mean, not injured. Hannah has played 20 minutes, and I know she is definitely a darling and a team favorite, but she doesn't have any experience either.
Right. Yeah.
So
no, yeah, it just feels like, and part of it's middle of off season. I'm sure once we get through it, things will make more sense. But it definitely feels a bit rickety at times. Of like, let's see how this is going to play out. And obviously, you hope for the best, and it's great. But I feel like other years it hasn't been as much of a wild card. This one, it feels like, okay, like this could go a few different.
I think there've been a lot of changes, and I think
Yep.
that's what I think. We've seen a lot of turnover in goal this season, coming into this new season 2025, and it's going to be interesting. You constantly you see new players come in and make splashes, your Corey Bethunes, your Alyssa Thompsons, and so on and so forth on the field, because they have opportunity to play. But this is like a statement to me that, like, not from the national team down, like, changes are being made, and right now, you still have your Jane Campbells, you still have your Casey Murphys and stuff, but now you got a whole new crew in with the national team as well, and your Tullis Joyce was getting a nod for Manchester United, and and stuff, so that's changing too. It's fun.
Absolutely. No, it is a very exciting time. So I a lot of things ahead. I think the one thing that I'm very curious about is kind of the future of the Super League. And I don't know if you like that transition or not. That's the best I could do there.
That was good. I know we were going to talk about it a little bit.
But I one thing I want to really highlight is, and maybe you can weigh in a little bit on this, but we have a Futures Camp, which was awesome to see. We had 3 goalkeepers called in. But for me, the really notable name in all of the positions was the one Super League inclusion, which is Niku Purcell, which is like kind of crazy to think. I don't know if you remember this, or if how many viewers remember this.
I recruited Niku for UCLA.
Well, I was going to ask, yeah. So many years ago, when Clemson was on the men's team, he called up a player that was in the NASL, which is a league that no longer exists. And that obviously kind of there's a lot of opinions on that at the time. But I think this feels a little similar, where it's like, hey, you've pulled someone, look, the Super League's a first division by name, but like effectively they're a second division right now as far as the level goes. And I'm more than happy to have Amanda Vandervoort come on here and challenge that. If she wants to pressure me on that, that's fine. Would love to have her. But I think right now where the league is, like, everyone knows where the loans are going. And I think that's interesting that from that league, you're pulling someone who is pretty young. I mean, she's 21.
Well, here's the thing with Niku that is her journey, right? Yeah. So, like, she had been recruited by, like, Sam, myself, and Amanda to go to UCLA. Then we left as a staff. She's still committed to UCLA. Came to UCLA. Didn't work out for her at UCLA. Things didn't go well.
Was her last game the UC Irvine game?
The one, yeah.
That was her last game. Oh my.
Yeah, and that goal was, yeah, you don't want that to be the last game. Yeah. But gloves off. But I think that before that, Niku was the number 1 goalkeeper in the country for her age group, and the number 1 recruited goalkeeper that year, and was known to everybody. So, having that hiccup, not really playing that much at UCLA, her first year, she was still sitting behind LB and everything. And I think that leaving UCLA, you go to Brooklyn FC, it's a stepping stone. It doesn't mean all of a sudden you're not as good of a goalkeeper that you were developing into. And so I don't know if Jill Lloyden, I know she's out there with the Futures Camp and stuff like that, had anything to say. Maybe, like, I don't know if Emma came and asked some people, like, what do you think and who do you think we should bring in? But hey, it's nice that they're broadening their vision, and they're not just looking, because that's why you have a Fountain Tullis Joyce that gets in. They're American goalkeepers that are playing in Sweden. They're American goalkeepers that are playing everywhere. And so, just because you're not in the NWSL, or you didn't go through a traditional route, so she's with Brooklyn. I'd love to talk to Jill and find out how she did.
Yeah, we might be able to set that up. Yeah, I will say.
Yeah, I know her. I'll twist her around.
I will say, if she returns to UCLA, I mean, I think everyone is under the assumption that, okay, she's going to get her starting spot back. And, you know, and that is in some sense comfortable, although obviously it's tough competition, it's a challenge, but it is like comfortable to go get that. Whereas it's rather uncomfortable to leave college early, and, you know, young age to go to an upstart league that there's no promises how that's going to go out. You know, like I think it's really interesting that she's willing to kind of make that bet on herself.
Because this is gloves off. You have to look at, as a coach, why didn't things work out with Marguerite at UCLA? What happened? What happened off the field? What happened on the field? Was there personality issues and stuff like that? Now, if that is part of it, and these are growing pains that she has to learn and work through, then maybe Brooklyn was the right step for her before jumping to another college, maybe for a year or whatever, and then going right to the NWSL. And maybe she needs like a little, you know, she needs to take the long path to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think this sort of unique, like player specific pathway is something that we're pretty sorely missing, because although the Super League is now coming up and it's certainly giving more pathways, there's still not enough. And I think this is a great example where it's like, yeah, maybe someone needed to leave college and to go get it, whereas someone needed to stay in college. And Gagny was at Brown before she got to UNC. I mean, like that's another very specific route to go.
Well, you know, and I look at like the Super League period as even as field players, like there's some players that were in the NWSL, and I think you're going to see actually more players that were in the NWSL in the Super League or in Canada, right? So Quinn just went to Toronto FC and everything. I think you're going to see that as well, because like I said, there were 42 roster spots and 60 free agents. So you've got that. If 40 free agents are signed, that's not the case. You're going to have a lot of free agents running around there trying to play soccer. Yeah. And so where do you go from there? Do you go to the USL? Do you go to Canada? Do you go to Europe? And so we're going to see a lot more movement now. And you have players like a Marley Canales who, you know, went up and played for Spokane and is killing it. And do you see a Marley Canales come back into the NWSL or go to Europe? So I wish I had this many options when I played. I'd probably still be playing.
Yeah. I was just thinking of like Niku to Lori back in 1980. Like how, I mean, that was just like a different, like for them to talk about their experiences. I can't imagine having hardly any common ground other than, oh yeah, we try to stop the ball from going in that rectangle thing. Like, outside of that, it's just
but back then you could pick the ball up on a back pass, so Niku probably didn't.
That's very, very different. Yeah.
Not even the same position anymore.
Yeah.
I think before we wrap it up and stuff, I think that we'll see. I think I like that she's getting a nod. And I like that they're going outside of the traditional box, that it's not just college players and it's not just NWSL players or Fallon or, you know, players that are playing pro in Europe. But I like that they brought some USL players in. I like that.
Yeah. Well, look, if you're really going to go raise the ceiling, then you've got to make sure you have all the streams coming into the league, not just one. You know, like you've really got to make sure you're throwing that. And
I mean, look at Kurt Warner. Let's just make a football reference, right? All right, look at Kurt Warner. All right, he was playing indoor, like he was playing arena football. Yeah, and you all know who Kurt Warner is. So that enough said right there. You know, he's a guy playing arena football that everybody thought was whatever. You're going to end your career doing that, and he's a Super Bowl champion, and he'll go down as one of the top quarterbacks. So you never know where you find those players.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a very exciting time. Let's wrap up on this. Give me one wish list for 2025 when it comes to the Super League, as far as as far as like what you'd like to see from them. I'll buy you some time here, but I think for me, and I kind of hinted at it earlier, but is to not panic with expansion and to keep moving forward. I understand there's a lot of things that I don't know, and the numbers and this
with the Super League, not the NWSL.
Specifically the Super League, right? Just because I think they're in a really interesting spot when it comes to like where they fill in right now, because I think it's easy for them to be like, okay, we're going to hold steady here, we're going to do our thing here, whereas I think what has made them successful is opening the doors and getting people in, whether it's players, whether it's owners, whether I keep leaning into that. I get like there's a risk reward, and you don't want to just have it run amok, and there's a level of play. I get that, but that's like my big wish list is like, don't slow down, keep moving forward, because they're not far off. They're not far off from matching the number of teams in the NWSL, which is really interesting. So that's my big one.
Well, because also the price to enter the NWSL.
Well, but that's the thing. It's like if you're going to start pricing people out, then you're going to start getting less teams in. But
you're also hold on there, because now we're going to argue. You're also holding people to a standard, and right. So when you turn around, you look at Angel City's new training facility, like that is how a professional female athlete should be. Treated. So that's how they should be treated. And they were like in trailers in a tent before that. And so, we want to go forward. So if that's pricing people out, well, that's how I expect like certain players to be treated. And that's how the Gurmas, like people like that expect to be treated. And so if you have to do that, if you want to be accepted on a certain level and be professional. And it's no knock to the USL, but everybody had to start somewhere. So, you have to start somewhere.
Here's my thing to that. If you go look at attendances for the first year of the NWSL and the first year for the Super League, the main difference is Portland, which is like they've always been the exception. But like it's been very, very similar. Now, fast forward 10 years, like they've obviously been able to build that. And I get that there's not success overnight, but I do think you look at Angel City as a product of, hey, like they've had success from people before then that they were able to kind of capitalize and build off.
But same with the Super League. I think that because women's soccer is so hot, you're able to do that out of the gate and have those numbers in those small markets because of the success of the NWSL and the success of soccer in Europe and everything else. So I think that, as opposed to starting from scratch, where there's nothing and you have to build an entire country fan base.
Yeah.
What is my wish? I would like to see them. I would like to see them delve into this free agency pool and these players that are out here with 10 years or all these years of NWSL experience and European experience that don't have a place to land right now, and put the best product possible on the field and say, if you want to rival the NWSL, and if you want to rival, European clubs and stuff like that, that's what you have to do. And don't, go ahead and take them, steal them, have the money, and then build that. I'd like to see that. That would be my wish for them.
No, I think you're absolutely right. If you're really going to go be competitive, like it's the same in college. Hey, when a Division I school steps in and there's been D2, D3s talking, like people think, and that's not to disparage D2, D3s. I get it. But like players want to go play at a certain level. And, if I'm getting kind of low end things where I don't feel like, hey, this is, I'm not going to get like competitively matched, then it's going to be difficult for someone on the back end to say, yeah, we're at that level. It's like, if you're not competing with them on and off the field, then so I'm with you on that. I would love to see an Open Cup. That's wish.
I was going to say the same thing. Okay. So that's what I was going to say. But I was thinking you were talking about like in their off season. But absolutely, I want to see an Open Cup because I 100% want to see an Open Cup. And I was thinking about it today. I was at the gym. Yes, I was at the gym. And I was, even with this air quality here. And by the way, I'm in such a good mood today, guys, because my house didn't burn down. And to all my friends out there and stuff that are struggling and suffering, like my heart breaks, and I'm here and doing all we can on our side with donations and charities and stuff to help with the fires. And it was a very scary moment. And I don't want to relive that. But I would love to see an Open Cup. I was trying to figure out when it could be, because the NWSL has basically July. And wouldn't it be great if that's when you could have games against the USL? Because we usually play like Club America, like I said, and you play Chivas, you know, and stuff like that. Maybe some European teams come over because they're getting ready for their season, right? So you'll have a Chelsea and maybe Barcelona will come over to get their games in before they go, just like the men do. They do their, American tour. I would love to see that. I would love to see the USL playing some NWSL teams in July.
Yeah.
As some games. Like, why not? Brooklyn should be playing against Gotham. Like, let's see it.
Yeah. I remember we'll kind of wrap up here in just 1 second, but I remember my first year coaching. I was working at first year high school in some no place Arkansas school, and the team wanted to go play their crosstown rival. That in football was always a big deal, but we had just gotten soccer, and this crosstown rival had won state over and over. And I was like, guys, give us a little bit more time. Like, give us a couple years. Like, we're not there yet. I think it's kind of one of those situations where it's like, okay, I get that, like, they want to maybe build up a little bit, but it's like, look, if you're gonna go be competitive,
but you never know.
Oh yeah, you never know, and if you're gonna go be competitive,
you've got to test yourself.
If you're gonna say you're D1, like, you're not doing yourself any favors by staying in a bubble for too long. I get you need some time, but
I don't agree with that. You have players that have played pro. It's not like all your rosters are full of like college kids that didn't get drafted last year or something like that. Like I said, you've got Marley Canales. You got plenty of players in there that have played pro, whether it's here, whether it's somewhere else. Test your chops. Chelsea. Who came over? Chelsea or Man U, whatever came over, and they spanked like. Washington or anybody. Fine, our players are gone. Some of your players are gone, but use that as an opportunity to grow your team. The games don't mean anything. And whether an open cup, I think this summer would be too soon, but I think you could at least come and do the friendlies, like the other clubs do this summer. You make that happen.
I mean, if people wanted to happen, it'll definitely happen. I imagine the USL is wanting to avoid a sweep of just getting like completely rolled. But I think to your point, you never know what's going to happen if you just stay stagnant, like you're not doing anything. So I'm with you. I think they could definitely do it if they want to. That's the thing. If both sides want to do it, it'll happen for sure. So
isn't there there going to be a Women's Club World Cup?
They've talked about that. Yeah.
So I think it's in. When is it? 26. I think it's in 26. Is it? I think.
Yeah.
And because that's in between everything. So you have the European Championships this summer, then nothing next in 26, and then World Cup 27, Olympics 28. So I think that, if that's the case, is the USL should be trying to qualify teams for the Club World Cup. And if you're going to qualify teams for the Club World Cup, it behoove you to play the other professional league that's in your own country.
Yeah. It says 2026 January, February. Mm-hmm. That's not far away. Wow. Oh, yeah. That's crazy. 16 teams. Okay. All right. I'm in. I'm interested.
I'm in. Let's do it. All right.
Yeah. No, Saskia, it's wonderful to have you back. Real quick, where can people find you?
At Saskia_Weber on all social media platforms.
Oh, we need to take the TikTok thing down. How do we cover that? I need to. We can't.
Well, they know they've opened it back up.
Oh, did they? I thought it was just gone. It shows how much I've been keeping up with TikTok.
It got pardoned.
Okay, it's back. That's as much as I've been paying attention.
TikTok got pardoned.
My TikTok knowledge is that shows.
I'm not gonna let it go. Let it go.
Honestly.
And the old miss is for one of my nephews. So.
Okay. Oh, I didn't see it. Yeah, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Very good.
I gotta give the shout out. I'll wear a Clemson one next time. It's just Clemson's a little tough for me because I lost to Clemson in the quarterfinals. So it's a little tough Dax for me to wear, but this one's for Ian. So
get like a Clemson football or something to make it a little different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, I'm Bill Reno. This has been awesome getting back in, Saskia, and we'll
see you next week.
Yeah. All right. See y'all.